As far as I know, I am not muted.
Okay, you should be good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you all coming out to see me to talk about the pivot operators. Or maybe you came to get some food and hope you pulled in.
Oh wait, did everybody sign the sign-in sheet?
So also want to thank my internal teammates for coming to put up with me presenting this yet again. It's kind of funny out in SQL Saturday, if you ever want to present, you sign up with a topic that you think is going to take about an hour to talk about. And I'll see multiple people put multiple topics out there. And then once they get selected, that's when they start doing the research for what is it they're going to talk about. I'm the exact opposite. I have to make sure that I have enough content that's going to take an hour before I actually present it on their website. So every time when I get chosen for this, well, every time I submit, I like to go through the slides and kind of update them, see if there's additional information I want to add. So every time you see this presentation, it gets bigger and bigger.
A little bit better.
And I always say this is the last time to present, but yet I keep doing this. So I hope you all enjoy it. I already know that it's gotten pretty good reviews from some of the SQL Saturdays I've attended. Presented this in Louisville, Indianapolis, and St. Louis. So let's go ahead and get started. So who am I? Well, I'm Jeff Foushee. I'm an enterprise DBA for QMetna. I've been with the company for about 15 years now. My last name is Foushee, but I'll take anything you can throw at me. I've heard it all. So we're going to talk about the pivot today. Anybody ever used the pivot operator? Who's never heard of it? Never heard. Okay? You're just going to think it's just so amazing when we're done with this. So first we're going to cover some ground rules. What exactly is a pivot? We're going to look at some vertical data and try to convert it horizontal. We're going to look at some horizontal data and convert it back to vertical. And so without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. The pivot operators are T-SQL LTP-based keywords. This presentation will not involve SSAS So I'm not an SSAS expert, but I can fake it using the pivot operators. Pivot is not a replacement for the group by statement. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. There is a similar concept with 411G, but we will not be discussing that in this class. So just kind of bring up a very basic example. There's a server. It's called LUSIS 130. My manager, Kevin, who is sitting in the front row here, is the primary contact, and I am the secondary contact for this server. And it needs to be documented somewhere. We have some kind of configuration manager software, something like that. We just need to make sure that they are aware that he and I are the primary contacts for this server. So there we go. Here's a row. You've got the server name, you've got the primary contact, and then the secondary contact. Now this is the only way that you can present this data, is that correct? No. You mean there's multiple ways? Huh. Well, I guess only half of this can be right? So some people will favor horizontal data, and some will favor the vertical data. So where the data is going down the line, on the left, we have our vertical. So there's one piece of truth per line. On the right-hand side, you have one piece of truth per XY position. So as new contacts are added on the left-hand side, we have a new row. As new contacts are added on the right-hand side, we add columns. Typically, you'll see the left-hand side for data storage, and typically you will see the right-hand side for reporting. But the real world doesn't work that everybody is the same way. There are going to be times where you need to take data in one format and convert it to the other. Maybe you're going to do conversion that their model doesn't fit yours, or your model doesn't fit theirs. You need a report, you need an ETL, something like that. So let's just look at taking some vertical data and converting it to horizontal. So one way we do that is with the full ladder one statement. We have a very basic base clause right here. It says select distinct server name from table 1. And we're going to full outer join it back to itself to get the primary contact. and full outer join that back to itself again to get the secondary contact. Fairly easy, right? I mean, we're only doing this for 2 columns. Oh, but then they come back and say, well, now I've got 3 additional contacts. Okay, add some more full outer joins here. And you can see after a while, this statement's going to get pretty messy to pull with, especially if the columns start changing. So what if I were to tell you there was already a feature embedded into the software, and that will make this easier, and you don't have to buy anything to do it? So let's talk about what is a pivot. A pivot is a point or a set of points where something rests and turns or rotates and oscillates. So we have a seesaw here. At the point of axis, nothing's happening. All the momentum is taking place on the ends, and also the other places that are moving. Same with the world. We have a point on the 2 axes that stays stationary, in theory, while the world rotates around. I'll show you my favorite example is using a wrench. So as forces apply to the wrench, the entire bolt turns. But again, there's one spot that stays completely stationary. So let's imagine how this might apply to data. So we take the channel multiplier and we just crank them out as big as we can. We grab that data and we rotate it, and now it's horizontal. Fairly easy, right? Well, it's not exactly this easy, but this will kind of explain things as we go along. So the pivot operator promotes data to column headers. And we're going to be using the clockwise arrow to denote this. So on every result set, we have our data grid right here. Is anybody familiar with this particular square of the data grid? Anybody know the scientific name for that square?
Is there one?
I've asked this numerous times. I have yet to find anybody that knows it, and neither do I. We will call it the magic square. So for data to transcend for values to transcend from the data to the column header has to pass this magic square in a clockwise rotation. So that's why we're using the clockwise arrow. To remember that, you can remember the letter P is written in a clockwise fashion. Right. So let's slow down how the pivot actually works. We have some data. I don't know what this data is. On the left-hand side, we've got some anonymous data. Maybe this data is a dependent, and the right hand is the number of children that they have. Maybe the left-hand side is my friends and I, and the right-hand side are bowling scores. Maybe the left-hand side is the store's IDs, and the right-hand side is sales figures. Who knows? But I'm going to attempt to pivot. So I'm going to rotate to the clockwise fashion, and we see now that the values on the left have now become columns. What we're also going to do is bucketize all these values. So we have these little storage blocks. So we have one for the blue circle, one for the green triangle, and one for the red square. So we have like an array, all the different values associated with that particular object. But what is ultimately shown back to the client when I pivot this stuff? The answer is that you get to decide. You will be using an aggregate. So if you'll remember your aggregates, count, min, max, sum, average, so on. And you will also remember that some do not apply to alphanumeric, such as the sum and the average. You also want to make sure your data is scrubbed before you attempt to do this. So when we look at the pivot clause, this is probably the biggest idea to learn about the pivot clause is just this section alone. So when I pivot, I'm going to aggregate column 1 for some fashion where the ID is in those values. And as you see, depending on what aggregate I choose, I'm going to get different values. You must apply an aggregate to these values. There's no way to get the array of values back as a result, unfortunately. I'm not aware of one. So the pivot is kind of like, but not exactly equal to the group. we have the same data. And I don't expect you to understand the syntax level right now, but you will see that you get completely different results. They look the same data-wise, but they don't have the same signature, they don't have the same count. They're actually very different from each other. Not only that, they have a different execution plan. So let's break down the pivot statement. Exactly one aggregate will be applied. Exactly one column will be aggregated. Exactly one column's values can be promoted to the column header. So Microsoft doesn't have a word for these particular values right here, but I'm going to call them values turned into columns, or VTCs. The VTCs must be explicitly requested to compile time. So you have to know the values inside the end clause here before the statement runs. And they must be enclosed in braces, so no quotations. All right, so we also need our original data set, right? Again, pivoting, build the original data set. So that's fairly easy. Both predicates must be named. No matter what you name them, they gotta be named. I always choose to put the first one as raw data, and the second one is pivot results. I mean, you can name whatever you want. But you're always going to be selecting from pivot results **. Raw data is gone. For whatever reason, it doesn't exist after this transformation. You're literally transforming the query known as raw data into this pivot results. Now you don't have to put pivot results dot. You can just say star from this, and you'll get the return directed set known as pivot results. So let's look at a very simple two-column pivot. All right. So I have my table and then my database name, pivot demo. There are no tables in here. Let's create one. And let's add some data. All right, so let's select star from two-column pivot. We have our ID column, and we have our column 1 column. Let's select distinct ID from two-column pivot. Circle, square, triangle. Sure. So let's start with an actual pivot statement. What we're going to do is we're going to take the distinct values and pump them into this phrase right here, the end clause of the pivot. And because I did a sum, I get the circle, triangle, square with a 4, 7, and 9. Pretty neat, huh? So let me try the same statement, but I'm going to attempt to select star from raw data as well. Can't do it. It's gone. Even though it's right here, nothing doesn't exist. So the order of the in clause also matters. So what I'm going to do is just reorder the columns inside here. And now I get square, circle, triangle. You will also see that you can get explicit order by saying pivot results.circle, pivot results.triangle, pivot results.square. You also get IntelliSys. So immediately I already acknowledge that, even though there's no physical pivot results table out there. So with this statement, I can control what columns, what order I want to show up in. All right. So in this example, I've selected ultimately my output is circle and triangle, but I've ignored the square. So it just falls off. Even though I did some additional work of pivoting the square, and then I didn't even use it. In this case, I select the data, but I don't pivot for square. Again, same issue. Doesn't exist anymore. And then in this example, square has been removed from raw data. This time square comes back null. Because I specified it in my end clause to show me something. So it's
kind of like a three-way and, right? You need the data in the raw data portion. You need to pivot inside the pivot results clause, and then you need to select it ultimately.
So let's just say I'm about to build a report, and I know in the future a new hexagon product's going to come. I don't know when. It keeps getting pushed back, but I just want to build this report once and be done with it. So what I could do is I can go ahead and include this hexagon shape in the end clause, and it will just go ahead and take effect. There it is. It's right there. So I don't have to come back when it's finally been introduced. It's already there.
Can't do that with the group by clause.
So I'm going to insert the data for the hexagon, and immediately it's already taken effect. Any questions about the two-column pivot?
Easy?
All right. Let's go to a three-column pivot. All right, so we have some data here. This is some. Let's just say we have two runners named Kevin and Chris. That's their name. And we'll see that they started a journal of their running time. And we see that Kevin has never run a 10-mile race. Kevin, have you yet run a 10-mile race? This data is still correct. All right. So we got our pivot statement. Each of the columns in the raw data has a purpose. We'll see how that fits later. Meanwhile, we also have to look at what columns are involved in the pivot statement itself. All right. So note that the name column is not involved in the pivot predicate. So what we're going to do is let's just kind of separate the columns that are involved in the pivot clause versus the ones that are not. So we're just going to call them excludes over here and includes on the right hand side. Furthermore, I want to separate Chris from Kevin because it just makes it easier for me to kind of visualize how this is going to work. All right, so on the exclude side, I'm going to take every combination and distinct them together. Okay. On the right hand side, I'm just going to do a two-column pivot. Apparently, you are experts at the two-column pivot already because we asked you questions. So when I get my statement back, I see I have my little arrays here. But there's no data for here.
Erase the ink off here.
So when I start to pivot this back, I get just a solitary null in this array, which ultimately will present a regular null in the end. So with this statement, I took this and converted it to this. Any questions about this? This formula will apply to an in-column pivot. So in a two-column pivot, where are my excludes? Nothing. The air. So there's nothing to distinct together. In a four-column pivot, I'll have two excludes. I need to distinct those together, and you'll have two columns that are distincted together. So let's give you a little more elaborate example. We got some store data here. This is some sales data. So we have our store ID, we have the quarter, we have the year, the sales, and we have some noise data. Who was the employee that made the most sales that quarter? Obviously, since this particular time they didn't make any money, there was no employee for that quarter. All right, so let's go look at the three-column pivot. All right, so my three-column pivot, and I'm going to add some data. Twenty rows. So let's start for the three-column pivot. 20 rows. 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 20
got the data. All right, so we're going to pivot the sales by year, by store. So I'm going to take the 3 columns I'm interested in and look at the 2 columns I'm interested in the pivot. So we have 1 exclude, 2 includes, and there it is, all wrapped up. Nice and neat. Now, if you want to add like a grand total row, I have the same query, but this time I'm going to do union all. And what I'm doing is I'm removing the store ID from the pivot query. So basically, I'm unioning a 3-column pivot and a 2-column pivot. There we have it. All right, now this is kind of cool. I'm going to derive a column. So as you saw, we had the quarter in one column and the year in another. So I want to make a brand new column that says quarter, 1, year, all in one column. I'm just kind of running the raw data portion of this pivot query, which is it's kind of like a good test case just to run what's in the raw data just by itself and see what you get. So I have basically merged 2 columns together with some text. And I'm going to pivot it by that quarter. Now, you notice that I started to get some pretty wiry looking column names, as well as the fact that I had to pump each of these column names into here for compile time. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to kind of dynamically do that?
Mm-hmm.
We'll be getting to that. So let's look at the 4-column pivot real quick while I'm in here. I added that noise data. So who was the employee of that quarter? So I have store ID, the quarter text of sales, and the employee of the quarter. Now I've got 2 excludes. I have the store ID and the employee. So you watch what happens. I get some wiry results. Basically what this is saying was, for store ID 3, when Bill was the employee of the quarter, then in quarter 2013, quarter 4, we made this amount of sales. It's kind of a bizarre way of looking at it. Now you may want that. I've seen SSAS queries that look something like that. Any questions on the 3-column pivot? Or the n-column pivot? Wow, you all are just getting this. No questions whatsoever, unless you all are just shocked. Alright, so when we come back to our original example, look how much cleaner the pivot is versus the full outer join method. So much less text. I mean, I want to change the column name maybe once. On this side, where I have to go in here and review all this text over. So how can I manage those VTCs? There are quite a bit of them in that quarter statement.
Mm-hmm.
So one way, you could go ahead and provision correctly. So I assume that the next years are coming along, or 2016, 2017, so on. So just put them in the end clause, and they'll go ahead and take effect now. You've already provisioned for the future. This is supported by ad hoc queries. It's supported by store procedures, supported by views. What you also could do is dynamic SQL. So here, this is a little tough to read because there's a lot of code in here. But I'm declaring all my VTC names. And I'm going to use a cursor to basically cycle through all the VTC names. And basically put my braces and a comma in there. And then ultimately I'm going to build a big giant nasty SQL statement that is all dynamic and then execute it. So you probably want to order your columns in a logical order because as we saw, the end clause is going to affect the output. You only want unique data to show up in there because if you get, I'm not exactly sure what happens if you put in the same column name more than once. But you probably want to use data, and I probably would recommend the index too. Another quick tip, I don't know if many people realize this, but you could say order by one ascending, and it just says take the first column and order by that. I don't know what it is, just do it regardless of data type. So let's take a look at the dynamic pivot. Alright, so I'm going to reuse the 3-column pivot, and I'm going to just select this thing here. Alright. I'm going to declare my VTC names, and I'm going to set up my cursor, and basically fetch all this stuff into here. So when I run all this, I have generated an end clause for my statement. I'm going to turn around and pump it right back into a SQL statement. So the full text of it is all this stuff, and there it went. Any questions? Who hates cursor?
Yeah.
So there's actually a different way you can do this rather than the cursor. I found out with the 4XML. So this is kind of cool. So it condenses a lot of this stuff down. It's really a trick. Another thing I want to point out about dynamic is that you can't use it in views. So that's the only caveat about this. Let me show you the 4XML version. Alright, so select this thing here from 3-column pivot. Alright. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a concat, which I'm going to concatenate a comma, an opening brace, the year, and a closing brace. Concat is pretty cool in the fact that it doesn't care about the data types. It will automatically, implicitly convert them, rather than you having to say, concat this text plus converted to varchar 4 year plus another blah blah blah. So when I do that, okay, that's somewhere where I need to go, but they're still in rows, right? I need them to be a one line. So what I can do is use the 4XML path, and now I've got them all in one line. Now the problem is I need to substring that stuff so that it drops off everything beyond position 2. And that's what this does. Now I have what I need. Now I'll take that, and I have the exact same result as I did before, but with a lot less code. All right. So any questions about the pivot operator before we move to the unpivot?
It's really too bad that Microsoft didn't build in some kind of dynamic capability for that.
It's a shame that Microsoft didn't even explain the pivot operator that well to begin with.
Yeah.
All right, we're done with the pivot. We'll start with the unpivot then. All right, so I have some horizontal data. I want to change it back to vertical. I want you all to notice that this arrow is pointing in the opposite direction. So one idea would be to use the union all operator, right? Where I'm just going to select, the property value from here and this property value, and I have what I need, right? But I mean, you're still going to have the same issue when multiple things are added to this data set. So in unpivot, demote column headers back into the data. And we're going to be using the counterclockwise arrow to do that. Because once again, we're going to pass the column names through the magic square back to the data. And the way that you remember that is the unpivot is written in a counterclockwise rotation. So how does the unpivot work? Okay, so we got some data, right? I don't even know what this data is, but it kind of looks like, again, we have an ID, we've got some numbers in the first columns, and maybe a gender column in the fourth. I don't know what this is. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to separate out my IDs, because that, just for explanation purposes, I'm also going to separate all these individual columns out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the unpivot to just this portion of the data set. What I get now is these tiny little data sets of 2 columns in 1 row.
There's still time to that ID, right?
And then I'm just going to do a cross join, and there you go. So what I've done is I've taken this data set and turned it into this data set. What data type would that column be? Something you consider. We're going to call it the lowest common denominator. So all runtimes urged by the unpivot must be able to fit in one common data type without overflow, without truncation, without collation issues. So we say we have an int and a big int, right? What would the resulting value would probably be needed to define as a big int? Say I have an int, a big int, and a varchar 10. What do I need? That's kind of screwed. The big int is actually a varchar 20. This one might be slightly easier. I've got an int, a big int, an int varchar 50, and a var 2000. What do I need? Would you say, Joanne? Very good. Well, var 2000. Because the character can't pass to a varchar necessarily without truncation issues. Very close. But I may need smaller. I don't remember. That gender column could have actually been like 2 characters. I don't know what was in there. So, or the tiny, or because those number columns were tiny ends, maybe they're only using 2 characters or 2 digits. Maybe there's a constraint that prevents it from going over 100. I don't know. But the point being is that you have to kind of balance between what your theoretical maximums are and how much data you want to send over the pipe. So let's break down the unpivot statement. The first thing you're going to do is decide on some new column names. I like property name and property value. It's simple enough for me. And you're going to explain which columns you want to unpivot. Now you only need braces if the column name uses spaces, which isn't very often, but they're not required in this one. They are required in the pivot operator, but they're optional in the unpivot. It's kind of bizarre.
2 different developers.
Yeah. So we have our original data set, sure. Oh yeah, we got 3 tiny ends and a var 1. So what am I going to need to cast these all? Car 3.
Car 3, yeah.
Tiny ends go from 0 to 50.
Yeah.
But like you said, if I knew that it only go up to 100 or less than 100, then maybe I need car 2. So I'm going to convert them all to common data types. I'm also going to re-alias these as themselves because whatever I have here has to match right here. Both predicates must be named again, and you're going to select from the correct predicate. Again, you don't have to put unpivot results in the front. You could just say select star and it will do its thing. But what if I had nulls in the data? That happens. Okay, it's a good time for that. All right, so I'm going to create a table called unpivot. I'm going to add 2 rows to the unpivot. Select star from the pivot. All right, so here's my data. I'm going to do a very generic unpivot statement. And there we go, right there. There's my values, my IDs, my property values, my property name. I find it interesting that it actually rotates the order of the column names. I'm not sure why, but it's actually presenting in the exact opposite order. So let me just do a column or an unpivot without any casting. And you'll see that column 4 conflicts with the other one. So no, I can't do that. I have to explicitly cast. All right, so let's update two values to be
null.
null.
So we got null right here,
null right here.
and
Now
do
do
the
the
unpivot.
unpivot.
What happened?
They just disappeared out of the result set.
That makes sense.
I mean, why do I have to explain every time that Kevin's never run a 10-mile marathon? Nobody needs to know that. All right, so now that they're null, I might give them some alternate non-null values. So I can use the is-null, give it some garbage. And now they've reappeared with that property value of empty string. What happens if I do this? Just the literal null.
Literal null.
What happened?
Yeah.
Your alternate text is also bound by the rules of the lowest common denominator. Any questions on the unpivot?
I guess if you go back to your example.
Sure.
So if you really wanted the null in the property value column, I guess in the select statement, you could just like look for that special tag with a case statement or something at the top and like replace it with an actual null or something.
Sure. Or you can also convert all these to car4s.
Yeah, but that's still, you're just getting the string NULL, not the actual null value, right?
Right.
Cross apply instead of unpivot and you get the actual null.
Interesting. Okay, sorry, Jeff.
No problem. So
Can I use dynamic
SQL
SQL
unpivot? I don't want to.
I
I mean, consider you got n number of columns. You're going to have to agree on some data type. Just use varchar 4000. Then you want to sit all over the pipe. And then you got to worry about your data links. I mean, what's the max available versus what's actually being used. And then how are you going to handle your nulls? I don't think a presentation slide deck would do it justice if I even showed it. There's actually a chart that will show you all the available legal casts that you can do. So yeah, if you want to study this thing and come up with a slide that will do it, then I'll be glad to include it in my deck and give you credit for it. So what do you think about that? So since we have a little bit of time, I threw in a couple extra slides. We have actually a demo of XML unpivot. It's not really an unpivot statement, but as you see here, I have a string separated by spaces that just says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I throw it into some XML and then just do a XPath against it, and I tricked it now into unpivoting into some data.
Interesting.
Anybody know what the data type of this property name would be? So if I were to select unpivot results.star to a new table 1, what would the data type be for property name? Yeah, in varchar 128, because that is the governing rule for a column name in SQL Server.
Interesting.
When you start upsizing or casting your variables, or casting your data types upwards, the datetime is probably by far the most frustrating one, because if you don't select it in a certain format, you might get like Tuesday, July 11th, 2014, and that looks like words to me, and you really can't query orders on that kind of stuff. So what I did here was, I'm just showing you how you can recast the datetime from the original into a format that you can actually use and still be able to sort. I like this one because you get to keep milliseconds on it. This is a third parameter on the convert function. So where do we go from here? All right. Well, pivoted and unpivoted record sets can be further joined, aggregated, intersected, union filtered, grouped. pivoted and unpivoted again. Anybody have a case statement, case study where you want to pivot or unpivot it again?
Do you end up with the same results?
No. Honestly, I have yet to find anybody with a case study that would say, you don't need to pivot that twice, because when you're pivoting it once and you're this way, and you pivot again, you're all just trying to get back this way again. So I always challenge that if you give me two pivots and two unpivots, I can convert them to a group by.
Yeah.
To your point, can I take a pivoted data set and convert it back to an unpivoted, or vice versa? So pivot is actually aggregating values, and unpivot is actually changing data types. So it's very rare that unpivot of a pivot will give you the same results back. So as we saw earlier, you can compute some columns and pivot those or unpivot those. You need to decide how you want to handle your nulls on either side. Something you also can do is you can use these SSRS data sets. You can use SSI's data stores. Why are you creating multiple tables to show the same data a different way? Why not just use the pivot statement? So I hope that wasn't too scary for you. We learned about the pivot. We learned about the dynamic pivot. We learned about unpivot. We learned about some XML tricks. I expect everybody to run back to their job and pivot everything they get their hands on. And I thank you for your time. Any questions on any of this stuff?
Excellent. That was great.
Sure. Okay. What I'm going to have to do on this one is I will have to get out of the slide deck and grab that, because I did not build a example for that. So let me jump to the actual statements. Okay, so I have a varchar string of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to pass that into an XML DOM with a root, an item, slash item, and slash root. And then I'm just going to select from the nodes of that. So basically, I've converted my varchar into data rows. Now what you also could do is, like, you don't like the space in the delimiter, you could put commas in here. So I'm just changing this right here. Then change my delimiter to a comma, rerun it, same result.
So Jeff, is that like, you see people post a lot of times, how do I take a comma separated string and break it into, a list, right? Is that the easiest way to do that, you think?
Yeah. Unless you want to do cursor.
That's what I see a lot of people do. Yep.
Well, I'll take everyone's silences that you all are shocked and dumbfounded and may not be able to drive back to work. And give it some time to settle in. I appreciate everybody for showing up today.
Very cool.
Did you have any further announcements?
Only I have a few things to give away. Did everybody sign in on the?
Do I need to stop the presentation?
Yeah, you can. That's fine. That's okay. That's all right. So, for giveaways today, I have a couple of things. So I have two different books. This is Professional SQL Server 2012 Administration Bible book. And then Itzik Ben-Gan is one of my favorite authors. So this is a T-SQL Fundamentals book by Itzik. We'll give those away second. The first thing I wanted to give away, I have two like training related things. One is I still have a few more of these, so I'm going to give away 3 1-month subscriptions for Pluralsight for their training site. So you can just use one each month if you want and have 3 months of access to all of their training materials. And then I also have this I actually got up in Indianapolis, but I don't really need it, so I'm just going to give it away. This is a Microsoft certification exam voucher. So if anybody is thinking about doing a certification exam anytime soon, so this would get you a free shot at a test. So my way scientific method of doing this here, I got to find the numbers real quick. So there's more food if anybody wants any more food out there. Okay, somehow I think I'm missing somebody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Got 23 people in the group. You guys probably didn't sign in there, did you, on the list? You sure? Sure you don't want to win a T-SQL fundamentals book? Okay, so I think I got everybody then. So we'll let Jeff pick a number between 1 and 21 and 21.
9.
9. Number 9 was Keeling, Rob or Roy? Roy? Hey, Roy. So, Plural Insight training vouchers or MCSE certificate or MCS certification voucher? So this will to take a free test for certification purposes. Okay. All right, and we'll let you pick the next number. 17. 17 is probably gonna totally mess up your name. Upal. Did I mess that up totally? So I get you three months of access to all of Pluralsight's training, and then we'll let you pick the next number. 3. 3. Lucky number 3. John Pyron. So, one of the books. Admin book, okay. And we'll let you pick the last number.
12.
Number 12 would be Lucas.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay. All right, well, thanks everybody for coming. Again, check out the SQL Sat website for information about our SQL Saturday event next Saturday. Hope to see some of you there. Sign up for a pre-con if you're still interested in that. And thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Well, I was going to ask you, do you want to make your demo stuff available for folks?
Yeah.
Is it easy to do that?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Do you have like a zip of it already, since you probably did that for one of the SQL Sats? Or
Yeah.
If not, just
I will
you can
shoot
zip it
you.
up or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yes. It's my most important pen.
That's why I wanted to make sure to get
that I
that.
stole from some hotel, probably.
You must have learned something out of it too.
I did. Pivot and unpivot are not the things that you do a whole lot of, right? It's the time that you need it that you have to go study books online and see if you figure out what the hell.
Yeah.
Right?
Dave,
Yeah.
thanks, appreciate that.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Cody, I know
Yeah.
I mentioned before with Curtis, I'll be the new point of contact.
Oh, okay.
He'd be emailing me, kind of, he's just forwarded.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So, but yeah, I was just letting you know.
Yeah.
Me and Lindsay, who's rather new,
Okay.
she'll be my partner.
Okay.
SQL, so I think we're really focused on it. So.
Very good.
We'll be at SQL Saturday next week.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
We'll be at the booth, the Curtis will be with us.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, we were with John Morehouse and Chris Yates.
Yep.
We were talking to them about it, so we got set up. Had the booth and everything.
Oh, very good. Very good. That's excellent. Okay.
Awesome.
And we'll, I think I have you guys, since you guys were one of our sponsors, you had multiple dates that you were able to like be the main sponsor and speak or whatever, or talk about job listings.
Right.
I think you guys might be next week or next month or the month after. I'll check it.
Just let me know.
I will.
And then you can still email Curtis and CC him. It doesn't matter.
Either
We'll all
way.
do it.
Yeah, I'll send a link.
I'm just next door, so.
Are you really? Yeah, because I know that several people are called Susan and Opesh. You guys like, oh, there's people.
It's like crazy.